YouTube! Today we're going to be reacting to the deadliest tornado in American history. This is the 1925 Tri-State tornado. This video is done by Weatherbox Studios. I know a lot of you guys love his videos. A link to his channel and this video will be in the description below if you'd like to check him out. And, you know, obviously this video, if you'd just like to watch it without my face being in it. Anyways, let's check it out.
In meteorology, we like to look at analogs. We'll obtain data and analyze it and say, okay, when in the past did we obtain similar data and what was the outcome? The reason why April 27th, 2011 was so well forecast was because the data within the computer models checked nearly every box that meteorologists look for in a southeastern tornado outbreak in April. It's happened countless times before and will continue to happen for years to come. But with the Tri-State tornado, there's no analog. It was an anomaly in every sense of the word. A lawn-track, discrete supercell producing a single violent tornado for several hours, traveling 219 miles and killing 700 people, right at the northern edge of the warm front. When the Mayfield tornado happened in 2021, many people said that if the tornado family was just one tornado, it would be very similar to the Tri-State tornado of 1925. But the Mayfield tornado happened well within the warm sector. It also didn't obliterate every single town in its path to remotely the same degree. The Tri-State tornado was a freak outlier that we really haven't seen before or since.
Okay, my understanding, there's no video of this tornado, so they're pretty much basing this, the damage off pictures, stories, the legends told throughout history that have made its way to our time. Now, I'm pretty sure you can go back and kind of look at some of the data from back then with on their little meteorology computers and stuff like that to kind of see what was going on. But there's no video, so a lot of this is coming from just word of mouth and some pictures.
There are many things about this tornado that we will never know, but we know exactly where it happened, who it affected, and how it affected them. So today, nearing the 100-year anniversary of the deadliest tornado in U.S. history, we're going to follow the 219-mile path, in person, from Ellington, Missouri to Princeton, Indiana, and learn about the anomalous meteorology, horrific damage, and incredible stories along the way. Prior to World War II, the Weather Bureau, the predecessor to the National Weather Service, did not attempt to forecast tornado outbreaks. In fact, prior to 1938, the word tornado was banned from all public weather forecasts. Prior to the mid-30s, frontal and air mass analysis was not adopted by the Weather Bureau, making it impossible to pinpoint exactly where severe weather, including tornadoes, were to occur. But in the early 20s, scientists were quick to observe that tornadoes appeared to occur only when cold fronts were passing through. On March 27, 1920, Vincent Jackal, a meteorologist with the Weather Bureau, flew a kite with instruments capable of measuring temperature, wind speed, and humidity high into the air, just as a low-pressure system was passing. The following day, tornadoes occurred to the east in central Alabama. He postured that the westerly cold air overlapping the southerly warm surface air was a key component in tornado formation. But, as you know, the government was slow to react, and throughout the Roaring Twenties, there...
Imagine that. Our government being slow to react. We all know it's a lie, man. Hey, look, they're on top of it. They're getting stuff done.
Forecasting and analysis procedures remained relatively the same. On March 17, 1925, a surface low was observed diving southeastward over the northern Rocky Mountains with trailing cold air. This low was expected to move eastward over Missouri and Illinois the following day.
The most random thought just went through my head. Hear me out. We should have told them that the tornadoes had oil in them.
Forecast for the Ohio River Valley was rain overnight into the morning of the 18th, with cold westerly winds moving through later in the day. Now, in a paper titled Meteorological Analyses of the Tri-State Tornado Event of March 1925, written in 2012, 7 scientists independently analyzed surface conditions at noon Central Time on March 18th and were tasked with drawing frontal boundaries where appropriate. This was the result, our current best guess as to what the cyclone looked like as it pushed northeastward through Missouri.
But I do have a question. The tri-state tornado, was that a singular tornado that traveled that distance? Do we know that for sure? Or was that several tornadoes from the same storm? Because I don't know. I would like to imagine that since it's called the tri-state tornado, that it was one singular, very long track tornado. But I've also heard some stuff that it could have been multiple different tornadoes.
Because it formed along the warm front, it had unabated warm inflow to the south and rain-cooled air to the north. Tornadoes and supercells love temperature boundaries, and the gradient which had stalled out to the east could power this supercell for the next several hundred miles. Additionally, the winds aloft at 500 millibars were likely in excess of 100 miles an hour, meaning that this supercell would rocket east-northeast for the entirety of its lifetime. Within the next 3 hours, thousands of lives would be changed forever.
Hold on, I'm going to go back to that picture. Holy dude.
Would be changed forever. The tornado likely first touched down west of Blair Creek near the Mark Twain National Forest. The deciduous trees were just starting to bud atop the hills. The Ferguson family reported watching a thin tornado pass over Blair Creek just to the north, with the sun coming out right after the storm passed. A trail of fallen timber was left behind. As the tornado moved east across the hilly terrain, the storm's downdraft likely increased as well. Fog developed ahead of the storm's gust front, which now blasted northeast at nearly 70 miles an hour. Because the storm was moving so fast, accounts of timing differ by about 15 minutes, depending on who was performing the recollection. But at around 12:40, this fog reached the small town of Annapolis, Missouri, a mining town of just over 300 residents along Bushy Creek. Mining was the entire economy here. Lead and iron provided jobs for the men to support their families, and thankfully, most of them were underground when baseball-sized hail began falling from the sky. Residents noted the appearance.
These guys didn't have to seek shelter. They were already there. Their job provided the shelter. That's crazy.
Of dark smoke rising to the west, which was in fact the tornado, but was not recognized as such, and so shelter was not taken. Seconds later, the center of town was airborne. Thankfully, the children here in the 2-story Annapolis school were on the far northern edge of the tornado's path, causing only broken windows and minor structural damage. It cannot be overstated how fast this tornado was moving. 70 miles an hour, 300-mile-an-hour winds. This tornado may have only spent 5 to 10 seconds atop each structure in its path. The tornado damaged 90% of structures in the town and killed 4 residents. The lead mine never
R.I.P.
again reached pre-tornado production until it closed in the 1940s. Large swaths of trees were downed from non-tornadic...
It's also worth mentioning, I heard a little bit about this story, that after the tornado passed, like the miners come up from their job site. And I mean, could you imagine, like, you're not sure what's going on above you, and you come, like, you get to the top and you look outside and just your entire town is destroyed. It had to be so scary.
Winds to the south of the tornado's path, suggesting either the inflow winds or the rear flank downdraft was blowing at nearly 100 miles an hour. Powering northeast, the tornado descended from the forested hills into the rolling farmland to the west of the Mississippi River. It's likely here that the tornado was aided by converging southerly winds in the Mississippi Valley and became a multi-vortex monster. It destroyed dozens of farmsteads between the communities of Beale and Ridge, as well as lifted an entire school containing 22 students, tossing it a few hundred yards away onto a hillside. 4 were killed
My goodness.
amongst the fields. Across the Mississippi River, within the flat, fertile valley, sat the town of Gorham, Illinois, a small junction at the Missouri Pacific and Illinois Central Railroads. More than double the size of Annapolis, it housed a school, train depots, grocery stores, and restaurants. The bluffs to the west are a beautiful sight. Stunning striations within the rocks poke through the tree line,
That's beautiful, dude.
over the riverbed. Sometimes, prominent terrain features like this one can alter the path of storms, and some Gorham residents believe that to be true. But not today. At around 2:20 p.m., the sky here grew dark, and 5 minutes later, the tornado arrived. Now a wide wedge wrapped in rain, it scoured grass from farmland to the west of town and tore through the rail depots, restaurants, and homes, all within a matter of seconds. 18 Missouri Pacific boxcars were tossed from the tracks. The screams of children echoed in the streets as the sun reemerged. The
My
basement
Lord.
of the damaged schoolhouse was used as a temporary morgue for the 37 residents that were killed. The twister rocketed up the
R.I.P., dude. Ain't that crazy? Like, it's moving at 70 miles per hour, dude. Like, I still can't wrap my head around that. It's like you got a massive wedge tornado that's pumping out 200, I don't know exactly what the wind speed. I'm going to say over 200 for the sake of whatever. Moving that fast, that large, that destructive. I mean, just in seconds, dude. People's lives are lost. Their homes are completely wiped out. And it's gone.
East Mississippi River bluffs towards Murphysboro, a mere 8 miles to the northeast. The town of over 10,000 was the county seat of Jackson County, and many men of the town worked for the Reliance Mining Company, Murphysboro Brick Paving Company, or the Escobat Silica Processing Plant. The Missouri Pacific, Mobile and Ohio, and Illinois Central Railroads converged at a large rail depot to the north of town. Just after 2:30, the tornado crossed the Big Muddy River and took 90 seconds to carve a path through the northern side of Murphysboro. A number of citizens say the clouds were rolling over and over on the ground as it approached from the southwest. Many didn't see a funnel-shaped cloud, others did. Gray streaks shot through the darker cloud on the ground, slanting or scooping down to earth in a gradual incline, and these streaks many described as steam, while others thought at first they were thin sheets of rain. Aerial imagery from 1938 shows us exactly where the multi-vortex tornado passed through, thanks to the lack of old tree canopy. The scene in Murphysboro was that of total war. First in its path was the Longfellow School, where 10 school children died. The loss may have been greater if Principal Fisher had not gathered the children in an interior hallway when the tornado approached. Next was...
Hey, man, R.I.P., but W Principal, get them to the safest spot they could. It saved lives that day for sure.
the Logan School, an ancient building constructed of sun-dried bricks. 5 more children died as the building collapsed around them. This is the Logan School that was rebuilt on site after the tornado. It has since fallen into disrepair. The Reliance Mining Company and Escobat's plant were both in a state of ruin. 30 blocks of wood and brick homes were shredded or swept off their foundations. Fires broke out amongst the rubble, and with the tornado severing the water mains that the fire department depended on, flames quickly swept through the city, fed by the strong, dry wind on the east side of the low. 234 people died in Murphysboro on March 18th, a record-setting single-city death toll from one...
My goodness, dude. Like, they're already devastated. It destroys the water main. And now these fires are just going to finish off everything. God.
One tornado. Following Route 149, the tornado continued northeast, approaching the smaller farming community of Dodto. Most of the men worked in the coal mines in nearby Bush, and the children attended school on the northeast side of town. At 2:30 p.m., the children were let out for recess on the west side of the property. But today, the weather looked treacherous. Dark clouds rolled in, and strong wind blew from the west, causing the principal to usher the students back inside. As the schoolboys attempted to close the classroom windows, the tornado exploded the school. Debris from the children's homes on the west side of town was launched through the classrooms. Exterior walls fell away and the structure folded inward, burying the children in debris. The infamous passage from the Post-Dispatch written by Sam O'Neill recounts the immediate aftermath of the Dodto School. When bodies were taken from the wrecked schoolhouse and laid out row after row, there was no one to claim the lifeless forms. The children's parents were either dead or on the way to hospitals. The school principal, who escaped death, was called upon to identify the children. His clothes were torn and there were marks on his body to tell of his narrow escape. He was dazed as he stepped from one bundle to another in an effort to identify the dead. 69 people in DeSoto died, and 33 of them were children. Images of the northwest side of town, where homes once stood.
Oh my God. Dude, I never, I don't like hearing of anyone get hurt, but, when it's kids, man, that's just so sad. At school as well. And there's just nothing you can do. I mean, the school was completely obliterated. I mean, the principal makes them come back in, they're shutting windows. But you have a tornado that large, once again, 70 miles per hour. It's on top of you before you can blink. And look at this picture. I mean, you can clearly see where a lot of these trees have been completely snapped, debarked. And look at how wide it is, too. Look at how wide the devastation is. Usually you can kind of pick out an area and you can see this small line of damage. And then you'll see areas that haven't been touched. This entire picture is nothing but destruction. And imagine that poor principal. You have barely survived. You're probably in shock. And now they're calling you over here to identify these kids who have lost their lives. Man, I couldn't imagine.
Ranks among the worst tornadic damage ever seen in the history of mankind. Pushing northeast at around 60 miles an hour, the tornado crossed the winding Big Muddy River several times, destroying a Illinois Central Railroad bridge and pump house. And then was the town of West Frankfort. Sporting about 18,000 residents, it was the largest town to be affected by the tornado. Most of the men were working deep underground at the Orient and Peabody mines that afternoon. Unlike in neighboring company towns, the miners in West Frankfort were in a strong workers' union, and thus they owned their homes on the north side of town, in the so-called New Addition. As the tornado passed by, the power within the mine went out. Upon climbing the staircase and ascending to the surface, the men found a vast open space sprinkled with wood splinters where their homes once stood. Bodies of the deceased were covered in mud, as the roads in this area were not paved. Despite the 148 deaths and 1,000 injuries on the west side of town, many residents in the east were not immediately aware of the damage a few blocks away. But by nightfall, looting and fires broke out. One man attempted to steal the wedding ring from a dead woman's finger and was shot dead by the police.
How big of a POS do you have to be to steal off a dead body? W, please, on that one. What? Oh, okay. I'm gonna lose. You gotta stay focused. Look. Why? And could you imagine the people down here working in the mines? The power goes out, you're like, hey, what's going on? You come up and nothing. Everything's been destroyed. You're coming up and you're seeing the bodies. And could you imagine you coming up and seeing a loved one like that? And no idea what just happened?
Help from the Salvation Army was critical for recovery, and they were serving a few thousand meals a day by the beginning of the following week. 7 miles northeast, the
Salvation
small
Army.
railroad town of Parish was wiped off the map. The rail depot and James Clems's general store were swept into the sky. Most of the 15 people who died here were in their homes when the tornado hit. The Illinois Central Railroad that once ran through the town no longer exists. Along Ewing Creek, near the Illinois Central Railroad Bridge, J. Robbins' home was flattened. Just to the north, John Gammon was pulled out of his home by a twister and thrown a quarter mile. He miraculously survived. And then on...
What? He lived to tell the tale. You got... Oh my... What? I'm at a loss for words. Lucky. Wow.
To the community of Braden, where somehow the schoolhouse was destroyed, but across the lane, the church managed to survive. Braden Cemetery sits next to the ancient red roof house of worship. This is the grave of the Smith family. Lonnie, his wife Lily, and their 3 children were in their barn when the tornado hit. The barn was thrown several hundred feet before splintering into 1,000 pieces. Belva, the daughter, collided with the tree limb and was found dead. Lonnie, Lily, and their son Roy were launched into a nearby fenced-in farm where they were killed upon impact. Unfortunately, their bodies landed in a hog lot, and, well, you can imagine what happened next. Despite the older son Willie suffering a head injury and losing an eye, he lived to be 84 years old. In the community of Olga, the New Salem...
I see... What? Like if it wasn't bad enough to get thrown into a lot full of hogs. I don't even know what to say.
Salem Church was blown several feet off its foundation, but survived the large twister's outer wind field. As the twister continued northeast along the dusty county roads, scouring farmland and pulverizing homes, it managed to perfectly embed a 2x4 in a teenage cedar tree north of Dale, Illinois. The tree stood for another 90 years. However, sometime around 2014, the tree either fell down in a storm or was cut down by the landowner. This is where the tree once stood. As the tornado passed into Crook Township, it blew an iron bridge that crossed over Lid Creek 100 yards northeast of County Road 4. Lid Creek Church, located next to the bridge, was completely destroyed. The church that stands today was rebuilt after the tornado. To the south of Enfield on County Road 300 East, 16 students were in the Truesdale School when the tornado hit. The walls fell away and the ceiling collapsed, killing Vernon Miller, a 12-year-old boy. Other students suffered broken collarbones, fractured skulls, and broken limbs. This is the original stairwell that led up to the Truesdale School. It's on private property, but it still stands to this day, one of the few remaining structures that were directly hit by the tornado. As the tornado moved into Carmi Township, it approached a barn where Rosa Smith and her son James were residing for the afternoon. Rosa was 77 and had fallen ill at the time, and James and his sister Lucy Ellen were taking care of her. The tornado destroyed the barn and killed Rosa and Lucy Ellen instantly, along with 60 chickens. The tornado approached the Newman School and cemetery from the southwest, just over the horizon here. Several victims are buried here, such as Wilburn Felty, a 9-year-old who was killed at the Friarburger School a few miles to the west. Students who were in the Newman School when the tornado hit recalled waking up in a field several hundred feet from where the tornado hit, getting pelted with large hail. Miraculously, all of the students survived, except one whose injuries led to an infection that took his life 3 weeks later. The Newman School was rebuilt, then abandoned, then caught fire in just the past few years.
So this tornado just like, here's the school, we're going to go here. Here's another school, we're going to go over here. It just, every school.
are the remains of the burnt down building. Some tiles, some broken glass, bricks, and rusty metal. South of Crossville, along County Road 1600 East, was the Grave School, where Robert Armstrong was attending. He and other students recognized the tornado approaching, but were unable to take shelter in a ditch outside before it hit. They were all blown from the school into the ditch, and miraculously, the worst injury was a scratch on the forehead. This storm cellar was installed after 1925, when they rebuilt the Grave School. The school was eventually torn down, but the concrete cellar remains to this day, likely shrouded by corn come summertime. As the tornado crossed the Wabash River, nearing 4 p.m., its forward speed increased once again to over 70 miles an hour. Across the river lay Griffin, a small town of around 400 residents. The twister passed over the village in just 30 seconds. 9 people were trapped in the collapsed Kokomore's restaurant, which proceeded to catch fire, killing everyone inside. 7 more perished inside the post office in a similar manner. The flames that consumed the town could be seen on the horizon across the Wabash River. The church on the north side of town was completely destroyed. The one you see here was rebuilt in 1926. River mud covered every piece of debris, person, structure in the entire town following the tornado. To make matters worse, not a week later, the Wabash River would flood, and the only viable way to reach the few standing structures in Griffin was by boat. From here, the tornado made a slight left turn and headed towards Owensville and Princeton, 2 more larger mining and manufacturing towns. The tornado clipped the outskirts of Owensville, killing 6, and then slammed into the south side of Princeton. It destroyed the Heinz ketchup factory, several rail depots, and dozens of homes before moving off to the northeast, where it would slowly weaken. There exists a patch of tall old trees along Indiana 64 that are gently leaning to the north. It is said that these exact trees were planted a few years before the tornado. As it passed to the north, the strong wind pulled them towards the vortex center, causing them to lean to the north. 100 years later, these trees serve as a living sign of the tornado's strength and power as it tore through Princeton. And then, a few miles to the northeast, the tornado lifted. 219 miles, 3.5 hours, over 700 dead, and thousands injured. A record that probably will never be broken. Yes, it could have been a tornado family rather than just one singular continuous twister,
okay.
But we will never know. Thankfully, hundreds of stories from survivors have been published throughout the years, so their accounts may never be forgotten.
That's the end there. Oh my god, dude. What a devastating tornado. I don't know what to say. To hit that many schools, and it wasn't just the fact, it's already bad enough that people are getting hurt and their lives are getting taken by the tornado. But it's also the stuff that's happening afterwards, man. And you could live the rest of your life and never hear that. And, thank goodness. I can't believe I had to hear some of that. People, already getting picked up and thrashed by the tornado, and then their bodies are getting thrown into a hog sty where you know what's going to happen. You know what the hogs are going to do. And then, you have a family, oh my god. Or that a little market there that collapsed on and then it caught on fire. Man. Yeah, boys, I don't know what to say. That would be cool to know, if it was actually just a single tornado, or was this storm producing a series of tornadoes? Unfortunately, just ain't got a video like we do today. Everybody's walking around with a cell phone, iPhone, whatever, and you can easily record. They didn't have access to stuff like that back in the day. Or the poor coal miners, you're working, electricity goes out, you come up to see what's going on. Your home's gone, your neighbors are gone, your family's probably not okay. That's so sad. Holy. I mean, over 700 deaths, thousands of injury, over 1,000 injuries. R.I.P. All right, boys. Hey, once again, Swiggle Studios and his video. This video right here will be in the description below if you want to check it out yourself. With that said, I am Cheap. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, all that good jazz. We'll catch you in the next one.